I put my heart and soul into this video, so I hope you like it. Each and every one of you is special to me, and that's why today on Let Them Talk TV, I want to return to the continuing story of binomial pairs. Yes, binomial pairs. If you're learning English, you should know them through and through. And I made a video on this subject some time ago, which was absolutely brilliant. Do check it out up here if you haven't seen it already. And in that video, I gave you 6 of them. And now we've got some more. How many more? I'm not sure yet because I haven't counted them. So first of all, what are they? Binomial pairs are fixed expressions with 2 adjectives, nouns or verbs separated by a conjunction or a preposition, such as and. So for example, we've had our ups and downs, but we're still together. It's a difficult environment and you either sink or swim. Sometimes you can use another expression such as by. For example, little by little, you're improving your English. Binomials have 2 main words, but you can also have trinomials such as lock, stock and barrel, which means entirely, absolutely everything. The company decided to relocate production lock, stock and barrel to a cheaper location overseas. How many times have you heard that happen? I mentioned in the last video, and I'll mention it again, binomial pairs are as commonly used in English as phrasal verbs. So if you're not using them, then why not? And even if you don't use them, you need to understand them. Phrasal verbs can be quite tricky to understand and use correctly, but that's not really the case with binomial pairs. They are just expressions and you can use them again and again. And there aren't that many. There are hundreds, perhaps thousands of phrasal verbs. There are only about a couple of hundred common binomial pairs, I would say. So with a bit of effort, you can learn them all. This video is sponsored by me. For those of you who want to dig deeper into binomials, I've made a PDF file with around 150 of the most common binomials and trinomials, and I've recorded them all with an example of each so that you can listen to them again and again when you're out jogging, doing the housework, cooking your lunch or whatever. This was a considerable amount of work on my part, so there is a small charge for this, but if you want to learn all about binomials and support the channel, 2 great reasons, then check it out in the description. If you don't want to make this purchase, then you can still join our newsletter, which is absolutely free. Link in the description. They follow a specific word order, so back and forth, moving in one direction and then another. But you cannot say forth and back. My boss kept calling me up and I had to go back and forth to his office all day. You can't say see and wait. It's always wait and see. The vast majority of binomial pairs are universally understood, and that's an important point. They're recognized by everyone or almost everyone, so you can very quickly convey your meaning or idea. You have repeating binomials such as day by day. I make a little progress day by day. You have alliterations such as right as rain, so they can add a little poetic element to your speech. Right as rain means healthy again. So for example, oh, little Johnny has a virus, but it's nothing serious. He just needs to rest and he'll be as right as rain in a couple of days. What I find really interesting about binomials is that sometimes binomials are a kind of museum of the English language. Sometimes a word has become obsolete in general use, but it lives on in a binomial. So for example, spick and span is an everyday expression to mean Tidy. Clean up your room. When I come back, I want it looking spick and span. However, separately, spick and span, the meaning of these words are obsolete and never used. Spick is a 16th century word for a nail, and span is a 16th century word for a new splinter of wood. The idea being that you've got a new shiny piece of furniture from the carpenter's workshop. You also have to and fro, which is a similar meaning to back and forth. I was on the boat and it was moving to and fro. Fro comes from the Old Norse word fra, meaning from, but nobody has spoken Old Norse in England for 1,000 years. Nobody says it in modern English except in this binomial. You also have by hook or by crook, which means by any means possible. By hook or by crook, I will finish this by Tuesday. A hook is still used, but a crook in this context, I won't explain the meaning now. It's not really relevant, but it's obsolete. You have no ifs or buts, which means no excuses. If doesn't have a plural. But doesn't have a plural. He gave me 3 buts. No, that makes no sense. But within the binomial, it makes perfect sense. Just get it done. No ifs or buts. What's also fascinating is that binomials might not even comply to the rules of grammar. Something is wrong everywhere else, but you can bend the rules with a binomial. Take, for example, good and proper, which is usually an adverb and it means completely, 100%. I told you not to play with it and now you've broken it good and proper. This time I've ended our relationship good and proper. Of course, it should be well and properly, but that's not what we say. Here's a few more binomials. First and foremost, you can use this expression in 2 ways. Firstly, when you're speaking to a group of people or giving a speech, or sometimes even with one person. During a speech, you might say something like, "Hello, everybody. Good to see you. First and foremost, I'd like to thank our lovely hosts, Judy and Kevin." The second way to use it is to say that this is the most important thing. So, for example, I know you want to go ahead with the project, but first and foremost, we must sort out the problem with Judy and Kevin. Next, I've chosen to teach you 2 phrasal verbs which look very similar but are in fact completely different. We have give and take and give or take. Look the same but different. For example, give or take means approximately. The attic will be completed in 2 weeks. Give or take a day or 2. Give and take means to compromise. All relationships require a fair amount of give and take. The next one I've chosen is quick and dirty, but no, there's nothing dirty about it. What quick and dirty means is that you made or did something quickly in order to solve an immediate problem. The solution may not be perfect, but that's what you've done. So for example, we made this quick and dirty business plan on the back of an envelope while we were on the metro, and it ended up being the basis for a $10 million business. The car broke down in the middle of the desert. Barry made a quick and dirty repair and we managed to drive on to the next town. Okay, the next one I've chosen is kiss and make up. It may sound like the title of a romantic movie, and it possibly is, but it's nothing to do with a love story. Make up is a phrasal verb with several meanings, one of which is to reconcile after an argument or a disagreement. There is an idiom with a similar meaning, to bury the hatchet. Kiss and make up is a little bit more informal. Here's an example. I didn't speak to my sister for years, but one day we decided to talk it over and kiss and make up, and now we're friends again. And here's one I like, leaps and bounds. And that's why I'm including it here, by the way, because I like it. Now, a leap is just a big jump. A bound, well, it's also a big jump. Now, here's where it gets a little bit confusing. To bound is a regular verb. He bounded across the room. Don't confuse it with the verb to bind, which is an irregular verb, which means to tie, which has a past tense, bound. I said it was confusing. For example, he was bound and gagged by the robbers. When we say in leaps and bounds, it means rapid progress. The ironic thing is that I often say this to my best students. Wow, your English has improved in leaps and bounds. To which they reply, I'm sorry, Gideon, but I have no idea what you're talking about. To which I reply, you have to learn your binomial pairs. To which they reply, what the fuck is a binomial pair? I'm looking at you. You know what I mean. The next binomial is to be over and done with something, which means it's totally finished. Probably something that you're not enjoying. So for example, it's hard work, I know, but once it's all over and done with, we can take a holiday. Well, you'll be glad to know that this video is over and done with. Do check out the link in the description if you want to know more about binomial pairs so that you know them inside and out. Stay mellow and see you in the next video. Bye.